Hello and good evening and welcome to an interactive discussion, very formative discussion on AI, the AI effect, using AI to reshape productivity and competitiveness. And so we have an interesting, dynamic, exciting presenter, Jim Joseph. He's an AI consultant. And when we thought of the topic and we thought of this year's Productivity Awareness Week, we wanted to focus on AI, particularly for the public sector, because we knew that the public sector was very late in its implementation. However, it is not just for the public sector. The private sector is also involved, but the private sector is also adapted to AI more widespread than the public service. So Jim came on board from the time we presented him with this topic to indicate, yes, he wants to be involved because he wants to spread the value of AI, the importance of AI in transforming the workplace, in improving productivity in every sector, whether it's medicine, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is as a secretary. And so he'll also be doing a training program with our secretaries, at least 24 of them. And since this program has been advertised, secretaries have been crawling from out of the woods to say they want to be part of it. And so we're hopefully going to do more cohorts of that. But without much delay, let me introduce the man of the hour, the man of the moment, who will tell us more about AI, the fears, the misconceptions, the myths, and the great opportunities there is for implementing AI in the workplace. Let's welcome Mr. Jim Joseph, our AI consultant. And he'll give you his full bio when he comes up.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Good evening to all of you. Now, there's no established protocols this evening, but I'd like to welcome Madame Florent with us here this evening. Of course, Glenn Simon, also from the NCPC, and other distinguished guests and persons who are viewing us online. The topic tonight is one that's dear to me, and I'm sure it is dear to you, and it's transformational. And probably it is a subject that all of us have heard about. We probably have had some sleepless nights about. And I know, looking at a presentation that we saw tonight, this morning from Drania, when she did a presentation on the effects of artificial intelligence, I know that it is something that all of us are concerned about. But before we go into this important presentation, Mr. Simon, can I just ask that we start in prayer? I think it's extremely important. I think this subject is one that will affect all of us, and I think tonight the presentation, whatever we have to do, I think we should invite God's presence here tonight. So somebody would volunteer, or you can go ahead. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much, O Jesus, O God, for giving us, God, the ability, Father, to come to your throne of grace, Father. We ask you, God, that whatever, God, we discuss today may be, God, used for productive means. Father God, we ask, God, that whatever we are discussing today, be it AI, O God, Alberta, specifically, Father, that you use it for your glory. Father God, that you use this idea, Father God, to propel especially our nation. And Father, that God, you make it good. Father, may you use it for your glory. May you use it for our advancement, our productivity, and make us more effective. Father, we give you praise, we give you thanks. In your name we pray. Amen. Jesus. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Delaney, for this prayer. I think the times we live in are unlike any that we have ever lived before. I've been in computers for over 40 years, and I've never seen anything like this before. I don't know if any of you have seen anything like this before, but it's something that gave me sleepless nights. I think sometime in January, I was depressed for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. When I looked at myself, when I looked at my profession, when I saw how rapidly this technology was just exploding, when I saw how this technology was about to take my job, well, not about, but it pretty much was doing what I was trained to do, what I studied to do. And I just started questioning myself, what's my worth? How would I get gainfully employed? What was my worth? My usefulness? What about my future? And I'm sure I'm not the only one who had those thoughts going through their minds. I think all of us have questioned ourselves because of this thing called artificial intelligence. That does not seem artificial at all, but it seems something that's real, almost as intelligent or even more so than us. Because things that we cannot do is able to do in such ease, with such ease. Let me see a show of hands of those who've pretty much done the same thing that I did. Question yourself, about what the future is, what the future will be, and how this technology will apply to you. Of course, that was the 2 weeks, but then I woke up and I realized, hey, wait a minute, Jim, you studied for that. And really, it is something that will assist you and benefit you. But it's unlike anything that we've ever seen before. Just a little bit about myself. I worked in the public service for 11 years as a senior computer programmer for government before I went into private practice. So I've been developing information systems. And about 4 years ago, I decided to go into artificial intelligence. I don't know why I thought about going into it. Nobody was going into AI. Nobody was doing AI. There's nobody I could call and say, well, hey, I don't understand this. Could you explain it to me? But I just felt that I had to move into it because it looked like something interesting. That was long before ChatGPT. That was when I had to write all my code and learn all those things, machine learning, deep learning, neural networks, and everything, and try to make sense of it. But I'm happy that I did. Those of you who know the answer to this, don't put your hand up. But if you look at this image, can you tell me what this is? I'll ask this young man here. Do you know what this is? Take a guess. Pardon? No, this box they're putting in there. Do you know what this is? Somebody else? Lashana? Okay, a computer, a box. What is the first supercomputer? How many think it's a supercomputer? Let me see hands up. Okay, great. Okay, Watson? Okay, interesting though, but this is what it is. A 4 megabyte hard drive being shipped by IBM in 1956. 4 megabytes. So think about your external drive that you put in your machine. Right. Think about the hard drives on your computer now that stores terabytes of information. But this is 5 megabytes. I mean, something that you write in a text file is bigger than that. But this was the latest technology back then. State-of-the-art technology back then. Right? Worth couple $1 million, or thousands of dollars, I'm not sure. Don't laugh. But that was 41 years ago. The first personal computer. I worked for a British company, and my boss brought this one day and he put it on my desk and he says, "James, here's your new toy. I want you to learn about it." It had two 5.25-inch floppy disk drives. You stick one in with the operating system in, and the next one you had some kind of application. As I had to write in DOS or BASIC, whatever I did back then, to try to get something to come up on that blue screen, on that green screen. It was a green screen, no color. Had no hard drive. All right? That's 40-something years ago. So I want you to think about this as we go. 1956, mathematicians. Okay. 1983. Now we are at this place where the things that we are doing with artificial intelligence seem like science fiction. I mean, growing up as a little boy, some of the things that I heard and I watched on TV, Star Trek, yeah, Kit, Knight Rider, right, all those things that I saw on TV that were figments of somebody's imagination. It seems that we are now at the realm of this thing called science fiction, and we're living it right now. But it's terrifying. It is interesting, exciting at the same time. But it's nothing new. If you have to stop for a minute and to think about it, it's nothing new. We've been there before. Right now, we are at the fourth stage, some say the fifth stage of what's called the Industrial Revolution. And if I may ask the question, what is a revolution? When you think of a revolution, what happens during a revolution? Or what's a revolution? What's your name? Gilroy? Okay, Gilroy, yeah. What's a revolution? It's marked by what? Change, yes. Change. Say it again. Dramatic, drastic change, yes. So what else happens when we have a revolution? I mean, those who studied in Cuba, Viva la Revolución. Transformational, right? Ideology change, paradigm shift, resistance, creative destruction, right? Change in status quo, right? Is it something smooth? But a revolution, we normally think of a revolution as something that happens by force, and you know, it's something that you fight for. It's something that's, you know, that causes us to think, re-examine ourselves, our priorities. Somebody's right, somebody's wrong. It's, you know, we don't all agree. So we are at the fourth stage of the Industrial Revolution. The first one was in the late 1700s, where we had a move from an agricultural, agronomic-based society to one where we introduced steam engines, right? So that changed. How do you think that changed for somebody who had like some cattle in his yard or some chickens, and all of a sudden now you had steam engines, you had the trains, you had factories operating. How do you think that was for them? Was that a radical change? It was, right? In what way? Right, but that was for the person who operated the steam engines and the trains. But what about the persons who were suddenly impacted? there was some kind of change. So now your wife no longer prepared your meals for you and call you at home to come inside for your meal. You were no longer around your children. You had to leave home and work on the railroads or go to a factory, and new things erupted because of this, right? Takeaway service, etc. It opened up new frontiers, new locations, places that you couldn't go before. So there was a change. Of course, you mentioned mechanization, and that was a plus, okay? You now could do things faster because you had this thing that was not dependent on animal or human labor, so it made the labor force more efficient. You had factories, etc. So it was like a new concept, okay? Of course, people died in the process, yeah? The second one we had was in the 1800s. We had the light bulb, electricity. We had planes, and that changed everything. So no longer did you have to row a boat, but then you could have taken a plane and gone overseas. Electricity made things more efficient. You could have worked longer hours. You could have done so much more. So that changed everything. Then in the 1980s, what did we have? Of course, internet. And was that a revolution? All right. With that came all the good. You could have done your research, and I was telling somebody earlier that before I would have had to have bought a volume of encyclopedias. And I remember us feeling so rich because we had encyclopedias. But every year you had to buy a new volume. And then it came out on CDs, right? And then I'm like, yes, that's so cool. And then we got the internet. I'm like, man, okay, now I could go online and find out all that information. That internet was so good. Of course, there are people who still wanted a little passbook because the computer and the internet were things that were exposing us to risks. And people were afraid, credit card fraud and all that, right? So there was the fear of that. So personal computers, as we saw, changed everything. I remember doing typing for CXC. One of the first students to get to sit down in a room with the ladies, and I did typing for CXC. I got a grade 1. And my first job was employed as a secretary. I remember using my Tipex and telex machines, and you're too young to know about telex machines. Yeah? Right, telex machines. But with the computer, that went away. All right, I didn't use the Tipex anymore, but all of a sudden now I could have typed in a word processor, and then things were efficient. The boss didn't really need a secretary. We became our own secretaries. So that changed everything. But now we are at this fourth stage, which is quite different from what we had before, because in the fourth stage you have the fusion of this and robotics. And I want you to think about it when I say that. That in this stage of the Industrial Revolution, it is a fusion of human and robotics. And that's where everything is heading. Towards that. Towards making mankind more efficient, more productive, and it seems to be going at a breakneck speed. So, I want you to look at some of those videos that I will show you in a while to sort of show you where we are in terms of the technology, in terms of the advancements. Maybe some of them you know about, maybe some that you don't know about, but it all has to do with this thing that we thought was science fiction. And I want you to take a look at it. Some persons here have seen it already. But this is not technology that we will apply next 10 years. These are things that are happening right now as we speak. And if you think you understand artificial intelligence and where we are right now, just know that what is on the market and out for public use is way behind what is in the labs. So if you are blown away by what you're about to see. This is just letting you see what we want you to see. And you have no idea of what the real tech is doing. Feel free to ask any questions. By the way, I have a co-host here tonight. I will mention her in a while, but her name is Roberta. She'll be speaking from time to time, so you may feel free to speak to her. Hi, Roberta. I'm here tonight doing the keynote address on artificial intelligence, and you could say hi to the guests.
Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here with you all tonight. Glenn will be sharing some fascinating insights on artificial intelligence. So let's get ready for an enlightening evening.
Well, Glenn is in the back tonight, but it's me, Jim, here. And don't forget, Glenn, I'm not co-hosting with him tonight. We did that this morning, but Glenn is taking a back seat.
Got it, Jim. You're leading the charge tonight. Let's make this keynote on artificial intelligence one to remember. How can I help you prepare?
Okay. So this is one of the things that we can do now to have this kind of discussion with artificial intelligence and to be able to speak to it almost in real time and to be able to get some of the input and information that we want. And as we go along tonight, you will see. But the first one I want you to think about is, how many of you have heard about Neuralink? Neuralink? Okay, good. All right, so what I mentioned is that we are getting to the place where there's a fusion between the physical and artificial intelligence. And this one is by Elon Musk. What it is, basically, it's a coin-size implant that's put on the head of somebody who might be paralyzed or blind or deaf. And it fuses with your neural network. And if you're blind, for example, you're now able to see. If you're born deaf, you're now able to hear. And that's the next stage that they are working on right now, okay? So this is
Nolan Arba,
human.
the first human being to receive Elon Musk's Neuralink brain implant. Let's talk about how Neuralink technology has already begun to change the world. In a surprise live stream through the X platform, Neuralink introduced the world to their very first human patient, Nolan Arba. With his personal Neuralink engineer holding the camera, the man who we've all been speculating about for the past 2 months finally got the opportunity to tell his own story. Nolan is 29 years old and has spent the past 8 years living as a quadriplegic after a diving accident dislocated his C4 and C5 vertebrae. These are bones kind of right in the middle of the neck, halfway between your collarbone and the base of your skull. As a result, Nolan has no sensation or control of his body from his shoulders down, but that hasn't stopped him from remaining incredibly positive about his life, and now thanks to Neuralink, it isn't stopping him from playing video games either. Nolan currently has Neuralink's N1 brain-computer interface chip implanted underneath his scalp and sitting flush with the bone of his skull. Underneath that chip are 64 tiny wires that have been placed into the surface of his brain about 2 millimeters in depth and specifically targeting the motor cortex region. This device allows Nolan's brainwaves to be translated into digital command prompts. So the first demonstration that we get is seeing Nolan play a game of virtual chess, and it's indistinguishable from a person using a computer mouse. Nolan hits pause on the background music, he moves the cursor around the screen quickly and smoothly in a way that seems effortless. Prior to the implant, Nolan would have to use a mouse stick to control his laptop. Now he is using a Bluetooth signal that transmits from a small computer chip in his skull directly to his device. Nolan explains the process of learning to use his Neuralink, and this was a learning experience for everyone because the engineers who have been developing this product for nearly a decade have never been able to hear feedback on what it's like to actually use their device. They can make an educated guess about what's going on inside the mind of a monkey, but having a human subject that you can actually dialogue with back and forth is such a massive upgrade. There were two approaches that Nolan worked on with the team: attempted movement versus imagined movement. Attempted movement was focused on trying to move his hand to move the mouse, the way that he would have done before he was injured. The idea being that even though his spine is broken, the neural pathways associated with movement are still intact and can be used as triggers for device control. Then there's imagined movement, and according to Nolan, this quickly became the most intuitive way to use his Neuralink ability. All he has to do is imagine the cursor moving, like using the force to move an object. He just looks at the area on the screen, and the cursor goes where he wants it to. And you can tell how effortless this is because as Nolan is talking to his Neuralink engineer and to the camera, he is also continuing to play chess at the same time. So he can already multitask between physical activity and Neuralink activity. And Nolan has only had his implant since January 28th. Obviously, the tech side of things is really cool, but what really sticks with you is just how much of a positive benefit this technology has already had on Nolan's life.
Okay, how many of you are seeing that for the first time? Okay, good. The FDA granted approval to them last year. Yeah. The FDA granted approval for human testing last year, and they are now on to the second patient right now. And if you think what he did was amazing, Google it when you go home, YouTube it, and see what this second patient has been able to do. From playing computer games to doing almost everything just by thinking and beating persons who were physically doing it, and players who played that game for years, now he can do it just by thinking. So you may ask yourself, and I was the keynote speaker for the Medical and Dental Association's annual retreat sometime this year. And I was asking the question, how many of you would sign up for something like that? And some people were saying, no, you're crossing the line. It's about ethics. And I asked the question, so what if your spouse was paralyzed? And you had the ability, or the doctors had the ability to find out, okay, or to get her or him to move or to do what he was doing again, would you? And when it was put in that context, then persons started putting up their hands, all right? Of course, I'm not advocating whether you should or should not, but I'm saying sometimes these tough decisions, we only understand it when we put it in the context of ourselves and how it impacts us. So how many of you would sign up for Neuralink? Don't put your hands up. But certainly, this opens up new doors and new opportunities for persons who have physical disabilities. I mean, imagine being born blind and being able to see or being able to hear. So you understand the technology. Of course, there's the other side to it, as we will see in a while. The next one I want us to look at, if you think that one is crazy, but think about this next one.
All right, get ready, because tonight's Future of Everything is mind-bending, or actually mind-reading, because it's looking a lot more like AI is capable of reading our thoughts. And we're not just talking about it predicting what kind of TikTok we want to see next or what kind of product we might buy. This next breakthrough is a lot deeper, all the way down to the very tissue of our brains, where researchers have used AI to translate brain scans into text. Now, for the study, scientists at UT Austin created a 3D view of a person's brain while they listened, watched, or imagined a story. And see, we've got it for you right there. That pink stuff, all that pink stuff means above average brain activity, and the blue spots have below average brain activity. And to us, we see that and we're like, okay, that part's activated, that part's not. But researchers say the AI was able to read the brainwaves and translate all of that you're seeing right there into English and turn it into what looks like inner dialogue.
This is a real leap forward compared to what's been done before, which is typically on like single words or short sentences, where you can get something about the gist of a sentence or something about, what a word is related to. But we're getting whole strings of text, pretty complicated ideas.
Okay, so what does that actually look like? Check this out. Here are the volunteers, and the volunteers were asked to watch a movie clip without audio, and this is what the AI described. You're seeing it right there, actual stimulus, and they described, I see a girl that looks just like me get hit on her back, and then she is knocked off, end quote. The eyes saw it, the brain processed it, and the AI typed out what they were thinking. I'm still trying to figure out how that would even work. With us now is Nita Farahani. She is a futurist, an ethicist, a law professor at Duke University, the author of Battle for Your Brain, Defending the Right to Think Freely in the Age of Neurotechnology. Welcome, Doctor. So researchers are saying that they hope that this could one day help victims of like a stroke. But how do you see this type of technology being used?
Okay, so let me just explain what just happened there. How many of you all know an MRI machine? Okay. Or an fMRI machine. Basically, they put you under it and they take scans of your brain. This is what you saw there. Just by taking a scan of the brain, just by looking at the images of the scan of the brain, they were able to take those images and convert it to text of what the person was seeing. This is not future tech, all right? So just imagine a victim is an accident. So rather than just taking like a scan of the brain and then the doctor now has to go and try to read it, right there and then it's reading the thoughts of the person under that machine. So you're able to understand exactly what that person is thinking at that time. It gets better or worse. What about dreams? Dreams is the next one, and that's technology that has been around for 10 years. And the imagery I'm going to show you is from 10 years ago, before we had those high-powered machines and we had even AI now, kind of generative AI that we have now that can do image segmentation on those things, right? Basically, the same principle. You put the man under the fMRI machine and then take a scan of his brain while he is sleeping, and then it converts the images of those scans into video, so now you can play back his dreams. Now, let's listen to what I'm saying. Understand what I'm saying. This is technology that has been there for 10 years. And you could see it from the quality of the image that I will show you in a while.
It just leaps and bounds better than it was the last time.
Well, you don't even want to think about the quality of the imagery now. So think about what Elon did that I showed you, all right, in Neuralink. Think about what I showed you earlier about converting it to text. So now you're able to decode it and actually get the video of what is there. I'm saying all of this because I want you to think about the discussions that we've had about privacy. Today we're speaking about privacy, data privacy. Up here is one of the last places you think you have, right? As your own little private haven, that whatever I have here is a secret or sacred, however you want to say it. And this is non-invasive technology, right? They've now gotten it down to wearables. Glasses, right? You don't need to go under this fMRI machine or MRI machine anymore. But let me just show it to you. This is what they did 10 years ago. That's from images. Understand, the technology gets better because as it gets better, as you start having more data, it starts to clean up some of those things, yeah? So you can imagine the quality of the imagery now, how clear it will be. In a while, you'll see people running across the screen and all that. But you know your dreams have different stages. You go in and out, and you know it's not always just consistent. So it depends on at what stage he was dreaming, or she was. I'll stop it. You get the point, right? It's 10 years ago. Yes, that's the person's dream, and all they did put them in an MRI machine, and just took like the normal scans. Yeah, 10 years ago, the normal scans, and then the AI back then was able to convert it to vision. So we see this, right? Okay, so let's continue. This here, of course, a lot of you would know about it. In fact, while you're at it, this is just explaining it a little better. I don't have any sound on it.
Patterns of your brain when you're looking at an image to reconstructing the image. So the way this worked was they put human beings inside an fMRI machine. They had them look at images and figure out what the patterns are, like translate from image to brain patterns. And then of course they would hide the image. So this is an image of a giraffe that the computer has never seen. It's only looking at the fMRI data, and this is what the computer thinks the human is seeing. Yeah. Now, to get state of the art, here's where the combinatorial aspect, where you can start to see these are all the same demo. To do this kind of imaging, the latest paper, the one that happened even after this, which is already better, uses stable diffusion, uses the thing that you use to make art. Like, what should the thing that you use to make art have anything to do with reading your brain? But of course it goes further. So in this one, they said, can they understand the inner monologue, the things you're saying to yourself in your own mind? Mind you, by the way, when you dream, like your visual cortex runs in reverse, so your dreams are no longer safe. But we'll try this. So they had people watch a video and just narrate what was going on in the video in their mind. So a woman, she gets hit in the back, she falls over. This is what the computer reconstructed the person thinking. See, a girl looks just like me, get hit in the back, and then she is knocked off.
Okay.
So,
All right. That's where we are. How is it coming home to us? All this technology, and if you understand what's happening, and I'm mentioning this because sometimes we think that we are small island developing states and we are immune to what's happening in those countries. But you have to understand that when those big countries sneeze, we catch a cold, right? And if you have to understand, a lot of those big companies, Microsoft, Google, X, well, Elon Musk, Microsoft, Apple, yeah, all of them are spending billions of dollars on artificial intelligence. Why? Right? This one here, we now
Boston Dynamics posted a teaser video of its new all-electric Atlas robot, showing the humanoid number 001 standing up from a lying down position, swiveling its body around to face the camera with a glowing head that resembles a ring light, and then turning and walking out of frame. The robot's limbs and torso seem to be omnidirectional, with the ability to rotate in any direction, while its face appears to be a simple round piece of glass, likely containing an array of cameras and an antenna on the back of its head. The robot turns its head before its torso to turn and walk away, giving off a sci-fi movie vibe. The description of the video reads, "We are unveiling the next generation of humanoid robots, a fully electric Atlas robot designed for real-world application."
Okay. I don't know if you've been following the trends, but that is the next trend of humanoid robots coming to your home next. Next year, we should have a mass shipment of those things to consumers, and they're cheaper than a car. If you think ChatGPT is something, just think about this technology that you have, and I see we have Dr. Fletcher here with us here tonight, but if you've been following the latest news on ChatGPT that you use on your phone, the latest version now is able to not speak, but reason with the intelligence of a PhD maths student, right? To write a thesis in a few seconds, a few minutes, right? PhD quality. If you understand that this is what you have in your hand. And they're looking at putting it in those machines because this is what will be powering them and giving them the capabilities. This one I want to show you because I'm tying everything together so you understand that it's more than just the little pictures that you and I draw and the way we use generative AI to understand what is coming and where we are, and are we ready as a people to be able to understand the technology, either take advantage of it or put safeguards so that we are not impacted by it negatively, right? So safe and responsible AI is something that we need to be talking about, and we need to understand what is out there so that we can prepare ourselves. How many of you all have heard of a Tesla? Right? Okay, good. This is the smart summons that was released.
Check this out. This is Tesla's auto summon feature. If your car is parked in a parking lot, you can use the map in the app to tell it exactly where you want it to go. Then you hold down a button on your phone and look at that. The future is now. Okay, there is no doubt this is an impressive feature. When people see it, they're like, what is happening? What is this sorcery? And it feels pretty cool to have the latest and greatest, I'm not gonna lie. But as fun as it is to show this stuff off, I'm not sure if I'd use it very often. Here's why.
Okay, so let me explain what happens. Tesla's FSD, full self-driving software that powers those Tesla cars, in version 12.5, what they did, they got rid of the code that somebody wrote, 300,000 lines of code. They got rid of it, and they trained the cars on videos of persons driving. Let me repeat this. Let me just repeat this. Before FSD 12, every time they needed to do a change, the programmers would write and say, okay, this is a stoplight. This is a green light, a red light. When you reach the red light, stop. Green, go. If somebody runs across the road, press the brakes. They got rid of every single line of code and trained it on videos. And it learned how to drive itself without one line of code. Understand this. So, this here is Tesla's humanoid called Optimus. That's an earlier version of Optimus that will be coming to your homes. Basically what they did was the same thing they did with the car. Same thing they did with the car. No lines of code. Trained it by watching videos on what to do. It's full end-to-end. That's the earlier version. That's the earlier version. Right? Last one I want to show.
This flying car will actually be allowed to fly. Aleph Aeronautics, a California-based startup, has received a special airworthiness certification from the Federal Aviation Administration. That means the company will be able to test out their Model A on the ground and in the skies. The Aleph Model A can carry up to 2 people at a time. It's considered a low-speed vehicle. It drives fast enough to be street legal, but if a driver wants more speed, the company assumes they'll take the car into the air. Takeoff in this vehicle is vertical, straight into the sky like a helicopter, instead of needing a runway like a plane. The electric vehicle has a long road, or sky, of prototype testing ahead of it. But Aleph is already taking pre-orders for the Model A, which is expected to sell for $300,000. For Inside Edition Digital, I'm TC Newman.
Okay? All right. So, does it sound like science fiction?
No, it sounds like Jetson.
Well, that one.
It sounds like one of the things you see at CES that never comes.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
But it's actually happening. This is not like CES anymore. This is what's actually happening. But I should ask you a question. I should ask you to elaborate on your question, on your answer, sorry. What does that mean?
Well, specifically the flying cars one. because we have seen many startups and many projects that have gotten their various certifications. So it's more like I wouldn't be surprised at some point if it does happen, but at this current stage, at least, I don't see it happening, and it also unloads an entire can of worms that they have yet to legislate on, which of course sometimes you need some destruction to happen before legislation catches up with what's actually happening. Purely on the flying car one, the Boston Dynamics robot and the various other humanoid robots. Various other humanoid robots. We'll see how those are implemented, but those aren't the ones that we really need to be watching out for. It's more a lot of the non-humanoid robots, because those are the ones which are more efficient, at least at current. The humanoid robots get a lot of attention because of this science fiction idea, and a lot of the design people want to see that. But it's things like Boston Dynamics robot dogs, which we currently see in military operation right now, that you should really be looking out for how that tech is then going to come down to the consumer level to interact with us.
Okay, so yeah, thanks for that. Glenn was just saying something about the mic. Do we have a cordless mic?
We have TV audience just to use the mic.
Okay, we have a cordless mic? Oh, okay, yeah, all right. So we have a TV audience, so next time we could go to the mic. But your contribution is a valuable one, and I like what you said about the military implications and the military use. But the presentation was not just to show about the form, that any particular form, but just to show where the technology is and where it's going, and just to show that sometimes what's out in the public is way behind what is out there. So we need to understand the implications for us. And as you rightly said about legislation trying to catch up with the technology, and I'm saying the fact that we understand what is being pushed and what will be coming gives us an advantage that we can say, hey, yes, we need to start preparing ourselves, and not say, okay, well, when it gets there, or it will never get there, so it's always been there, I've seen it at CES or whatever. But now we need to have these kinds of discussions, and we need to start thinking, hey, what do we need to put in place? How do we safeguard ourselves? Is that something that's viable? What do we have in place? Because whether we want to accept it or not, it's part of the Industrial Revolution, and it has disrupted us in ways that we could not have imagined last year, and even earlier this year, I think from March. Yes, some of the things that we're seeing right now, and the technology could do, and AI can do, and basically it's the same technology that's fueling and powering those things. And to go back to what you were saying, and even to go back to what I was saying, artificial intelligence has been there from way back. But the reason why it has not been able to get the kind of, we're not able to get the kind of advances that we have, because what? We didn't have the hardware, we didn't have the data, and plus the type of technology that we use right now, the types of models that we have, particularly like the transformer model and all that we have, we're able to do some of those things that we could not do back then, is opening the door for us to do things that we previously could not have done. So to say that because we were not able to do it, we will not be able to do it, we need to think differently. But I certainly take, what you're saying into consideration. I think you were saying something. You want to? Yes, go ahead, yes.
Good evening. Jim, I just wanted to say most of us would have seen Jetsons so many decades ago with all those flying cars, and it's actually becoming a reality. Just to debunk what he's saying, I mean, everything improves in time, right? I need to say, ladies and gentlemen, I said that to my wife when I first met her 19 years ago. God rest her soul. My mom was the first person who ever mentioned to me, and that's I don't think I was in my teens yet, probably in 9, 10, around there. And my mom was the first person who told me that there will come a time when machines will be infused in the human body and they would be able to perform tasks just by thinking. My mom, God praise her soul, she died in 2019. And I'm living to see it, and when I see those things happening, I told my wife about Neuralink not too long ago, and I told her, here's what my mom was telling me. Elon Musk is already experimenting with this thing by placing chips in people, and we saw it. My mom, God bless her soul, was the first person to tell me this many, many, many moons ago. I wish she was here to see that, but such is life.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. But what do you think, what's your impression of the technology, of what you've seen tonight? Is it something that you think we're ready for? Is it something you think that will not become a reality or will become a reality? Do you think that is something that we need to be preparing for? Do you think that there's economic benefits in what we're seeing there? Do you think that it is something that we should say no to? How do you think we should prepare for it? These are some of the questions that we need to ask ourselves tonight. Maybe I could get some feedback from the audience. The first question, do you think that we are ready for artificial intelligence? Go ahead.
Hey, good evening to all. I hope you all can hear.
I want to bring it up a bit.
Yeah. Can you all hear? All right, thank you. I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm looking at artificial intelligence as having a lot of positive avenues where we can grow and stuff like that. But, you know, we have a difficult time even being responsible with a cell phone. Far less technology that, you know, that we maybe at one point cannot control, because based on what I'm seeing there, if AI learns, it depends on who the teacher is. So if I teach good, then good is the result, possibly. But if I can just as well teach it to do things that are not good, and these are some of the things that concern me when I'm listening to the applications of AI and how it is going to be controlled.
Okay, so the question to you, and it goes back to something that the godfather of AI said, Jeffrey Linton. He said that they're not, what he's concerned about is not the technology itself, it's not AI itself, but the bad actors. So having said what you said, how it goes back to the responsibility, as you mentioned about the cell phone. So how do we become responsible, and how does that responsibility, and where does that responsibility start?
Well, again, I mean, I didn't really think of that, of the solution.
I deliberately asked that question.
Yeah, but the thing is that you asked if we're ready, and I don't think we are ready for that level of responsibility.
Why do you think so?
Because human beings have proven themselves to be very destructive at times. If you look out throughout our history, yes, we've done some good things, and sometimes, you know, they say the path of something, I can't remember, is paved with good intentions.
The road to hell.
The road, exactly. So, you know, I mean, again, it depends on the user, and how do you control the user? I cannot give a solution to that. I think that it needs to be something that has to be really looked at its core and really planned out before anybody can decide whether this is good or bad. But as I sit here now, I really and truly don't think that we are ready for that level of responsibility. That's my personal opinion.
Okay. So as we speak here, as we sit here tonight, and we speak about the economic benefits of artificial intelligence, if you look at what's happening in the States, a lot of it is driven by economics. It's about profitability. Billions of dollars are being spent by by those companies because they certainly see the benefit of it. We see the use of it. So how do we weigh those two? The economic benefits, the social benefit, the moral, ethical implications, because what you speak to has to do with things dealing with ethics, morality, and intent. So how do we weigh those two? Yeah, Jania?
To look at the first question, are we ready? It's not a question of being ready, it's already here. So it's either you shape up and you get on the wagon. In terms of when we look at our society and being ready, there are still people trying to apply systems that belongs to the third industrial revolution and second to this new system. So the question is, how do you get those persons who are still stuck in the third and second industrial revolution to get on board to this fourth one, to convince them that you need to make a shift and you need to accept that it is here. It is the same way that I watched the black and white television, then there was color, and there was a point in time St. Lucia television shut down at a certain time in the night, and then it became 24 hours, and then people said all sorts of things. We would be jumping off the cliff, and there would be this, and there would be that. And now, we have Netflix, and you can go on when you want. So how do we as a society dealing with productivity get those persons who are still applying those systems that is slowing down the process and our advancement to get on board the train? And man has always dealt with ethical, moral issues when it comes to technology and all sorts of other things. I think we will deal with it, but the point is, how do we get those persons into that space where it becomes now a point where we can actually benefit and it can become economically viable, rather than have them apply these old systems? And some of those persons are in key positions that are supposed to be movers and shakers. So how do we do that?
Very, very good question. And it speaks to the divide. And I was speaking to someone earlier and speaking about some of the things that we don't take into consideration in terms of this technology and the cost implications. You brought up a very important point. How do we get persons to move? And that raises the other question. Can we not move? Do we have to move? I think knowledge is key to all of this. I think we have a huge percentage of the population who does not understand the technology, who does not understand the implications, both positive and negative, who does not understand how the technology can be used for economic and other benefits. Persons don't understand the dangers and the harm that comes from this technology. I was speaking to somebody today, and they were talking about privacy, and even as we look at those things about the dreams and all, and I was saying, we don't understand that the term data has changed. Whereas before, I mean, last week we were doing a session, Mr. Khan, and I was mentioning to you, we still think that data is something that's in our legacy systems, our databases, our spreadsheets, our paper files. But generative AI has shown us that it doesn't really matter what it is. Here is Elon training on videos, right? Here we see that through just a scan, you're able to convert it to text, to video. And if we have to understand this paradigm, and how data has changed, and our view of data, our view of information, and assessment and analysis of data. As Drania mentioned, then we have to understand that the world as we know it has changed, whether for the good or the bad. This is a discussion that we will need to have. But life as we know it has changed. And as we mentioned in the statement about the economic benefits, about reshaping productivity and enhancing competitiveness, these are things that we need to start thinking. How do we compete? Is this a new form of slavery? I don't want to go there, but is that a case where the players with all the money, with all the tech, with all the infrastructure are now imprisoning us, that those who don't have will be left behind. Those who don't have it will be the ignorant ones. Those who don't apply it. Reading and writing was something that we looked at as something that enslaved us, the ability to read and write. And now those tools are coming to take away, let me make sure. If we don't understand how to use those tools, we can become the illiterates of the future who now have technology that's thinking for us, reasoning for us, doing things for us, and we're merely just consumers and puppets. That we cannot function without them. So are we now, or how do we learn now to use those tools to be able to reshape productivity? And that's something that we need to have a serious discussion about. Our education system. How do we teach? Right? How do we educate? How does a university in the next 5 years, what does it look like? What's the role of a teacher? If I could pick up the phone now and have this conversation with a bot and it speaks to me, even in Creole, right? Okay? I can tell it right now to speak to me in Lucian Creole, and it will speak to me in Lucian Creole, just like somebody from Denry or whatever would speak to me about almost any subject, right? How do we use those tools to enhance competitiveness in the service, in the private sector? And I see Dr. Fletcher lining up there. Jimmy, I would really want you to come up because I know that's something that's you're passionate about, because, I mean, you drove that initiative, years ago, looking at reform within the public sector. So these are discussions that I'm not hearing. And I think we need to have those discussions right now. The train is moving. And we need to have those hard discussions. Dr. Fletcher.
Thanks, Jim. Good evening, everyone. Just a few thoughts. I mean, I think the evolution will happen, whether we want to or not. We can't stop it. It'll happen. It's already here. So it really is now for us to put ourselves in a position to benefit from it. Now, there's certain things I think we need to do. First of all, we still have a digital divide in this country. I was watching Julian's homecoming, not from St. Lucia, but from New York. And there were places where we were getting buffering. Now, you can't talk about using AI, using technology, which is so hungry for data, if we can't even watch a video feed, not in 4K. Okay, we can't even watch a video feed on our television from Viewfort to Castries without there being dead spots. It means now that we are creating poverty. We are creating another level of poverty because the people who live in those areas will never be able to benefit from the technology the way somebody living in Grosselet or Viewfort or some other area where the service provider has concentrated its service. So that's the first thing we have to do. Second thing we have to look at is training and retraining. I mean, you're right. It's the phrase from Toffler that the illiterate of the future, not those who cannot read or write, but they are those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Now, the thing is, the young people now are digital natives. That will not be a problem for them. The problem are the older ones. And how do they adjust? Some of them will not adjust. Some of them will die. I mean, I'm being blunt. They are dying. So this technology is not so much for them. It is to ensure that the young people that we have can benefit from it, and we give them. There are things that I can now ask ChatGPT to do that it will do for me. If I want a non-disclosure agreement written, I will give it all the information, and I will tell ChatGPT, give me a non-disclosure agreement. I had to speak in a foreign country, and they asked me for a speaker contract. I'd never done a speaker contract before. I got it done in 2 seconds. I just told it what I wanted, and that was done. That, unfortunately, is now work that's been taken away from someone. So we have to retrain people. The people who will not have to worry about AI are the people who, when I worked in Dominica, I saw on that ferry with me all the time. The trained carpenters and tradesmen, they don't have to worry about AI. So,
Yet.
At least not yet. At least not yet. At least not yet. Yeah, but so they have some. So we have to understand where the technology is going and prepare our population for those trends, because we know, okay, there we have a little bit of time. We're not going to get to digital printing for a while of houses, so we have a little bit of time there. But there are other areas where we are still training people. If you go on the government priority list, you will see that we are telling people go and get take a student loan to do things that AI is replacing.
Yes.
Now that doesn't make sense. Okay. The other thing that I think we have to look at is who is driving the AI, and you touched on it. AI is not being driven by philanthropy. AI is being driven by the private sector. So they want the AI to do what makes sense for them and what will bring them profit. So that is something, again, we have to see how we can influence. And when I say we, I'm not talking about you and me, but I'm talking about civil society, small island developing states coming together as a collective and ensuring that we can get AI that works for us, which brings me to a point of the data and the information. I am very worried that the algorithms that are being used are not our algorithms. Okay, so the outcomes are not outcomes that are favorable to us or make sense to us. Recently, I did a recruitment for a regional agency that I am part of, I'm chairing, and we contracted someone who told us that, look, this psychometric testing tool he has is perfect. We don't even have to interview the person. That after they've done these psychometric tests, he can guarantee me that he's going to give me the rock star. And he gave me the rock star out of, we interviewed 15 people. He told me, this person is your rock star. We interviewed his rock star, and his rock star did not come 5th or 6th. Because there are certain things that the algorithms were being interpreted to look for. I did it, and the things it told me about myself were absolutely false. It said that, you see, it looks, if you ask Otter or Reed to do a transcript of your Zoom chat, it will tell you that they were aggressive or there was loud chatter. That's just us talking normally. Yep. But it interprets that as aggression. It interprets that as there being anger, and that's the bias. That's the information bias that has been fed into the machine. We have to ensure that AI is not giving outcomes that are inimical to our own interests. And again, I think that's where some of the conversations need to be, because there are certain things we can influence and certain things that we cannot influence. But you know what really worries me? The AI we don't know about. The AI we know about is the one that's out there that you're showing. The AI that the US government and others are working on, which is light years ahead from what you're seeing there, has been working on what they're using it for. That's the AI I'm worried about. That AI, we can deal with that. As groundbreaking and as mind-boggling as it sounds, it's what they are not telling us that they're working on and they're already using. That is what worries me. Yeah.
Very good, very good. Very good discussion. And I think, as you mentioned, these are the kinds of discussions that we need to have, because we have to understand what is driving those big companies. And it is all about data. And another side of this that we have to understand, and this is why I spoke about this whole thing about privacy. Today we were mentioning this. When Elon Musk bought Twitter, well, now X, I was wondering why this man, he wants to tweet more? But when I thought about it, I'm like, no, it's about data, all right? You understand now that with generative AI and all the things that we're able to do with it, that's them getting more data. More information about you and I, right down to a micro level, to be able to, well, Dr. Fletcher mentioned it, right? It's about profitability, it's about control, and he spoke about the military component. I don't even want to go there because you could understand where this is going, but the implications of all of this. and a lot of AI is being used in military applications or military have military implications, and a lot of it, all right? So how do we prepare ourselves? How do we prepare for what's not what's coming, but what's there? Your question, Mr. Senville.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
You asked a few questions that I think I'll try to tackle, maybe 2 or 3. There's so many, I just couldn't do justice to them all. We've seen the videos of people who could link to the machines. The Neuralink, for example, we see the Teslas that drive themselves. We could see where some of that is going. And to answer your question partially about how do we prepare ourselves, I think we need to consider what do we need to be and what do we need to yield, what do we need to give up in a way to take advantage of this. So for example, self-driving cars, whether they're programmed with crack programmers, writing their code, or some AI using videos to train the machines, one way or the other, they'll be given instructions, algorithms, as Dr. Fletcher said before. But the bottom line is there'll be driving machines capable of driving themselves and passengers, us, in them. Are we prepared to not be driving a vehicle actively behind the wheel and let the vehicle take us where we say we want to go and pick us up where we say we will be or where we are? Are we prepared to give up the walking to a vehicle, putting a key in the ignition, and driving off? The mindset of those who think, well, they might not be safe, they might crash. Perhaps we cause crashes when we drive. But if you think about it carefully, coldly, calculatingly, the fraction of accidents that self-driving cars cause compared to the rate of accidents that we cause with our distracted driving, our habits, we probably would be in the category of causing more accidents than the automated vehicles. Mm-hmm. Are we prepared for the sake of just the numbers, the safety? If we look at safety, self-driving cars, safer. Mm-hmm. But we give up our control of the wheel. That's, I think, the sort of thing we need to be considering.
Let me ask you a question,
sure.
And that is, I think, at the heart of the discussion that we're having tonight. Because in everything in life, there's a give and take. I mean, assets minus liabilities, capital. That, if you have to do a degree, you have to give up climbing with the boys and going to the disco. All right? There is some give and take. To be able to enjoy the comfort of riding a car and having it control, there is something that you have to give up. So you always have to give up something, right? But I'm asking this in terms of your statement. What are we giving up?
What are we prepared to give up?
Yeah, so I'm saying the question I'm asking, though, because you mentioned the control component. I remember it took me a long time before I gave up my stick, because I always felt when I have control of that manual car, I was in control. All right. Even now, I mean, my car, I have paddles. I hardly use the paddles. All right. I'm saying all of this is it is a progression from walking to the television to using the remote control to having smart lighting in your house and all. Isn't that part of giving up something to get something? Which is the question that I'm asking.
I think to a sense, yes.
Yeah, because that's I'm asking is beyond what you're talking about, the giving up of the control. I think what I would like to hear is the part that somebody mentioned about the ethical and moral obligations and stuff, that some of those things will have to, for example, if a self-driving car is going down the road and it's going so fast and there's an elderly man crossing the road and a child, how does it make a decision as to which one it should hit when it's calculated that I need to hit one?
I think, if I may use
no, it can't hit the brakes because the person ran across the road or the person was behind the vehicle. I'm saying, how does the car make that decision? So that's some of the things that I'm saying, the kinds of things that I think. Yeah. But I'm stealing your question. Yeah.
If we take that particular example about the car driving so fast that it has to hit a person, not crash itself, then we might be thinking of the wrong way of the technology being used. Fun fact, if I just switch gear, no pun intended. I was using ChatGPT earlier this year, and someone in a group that I'm in, a chat group, mentioned that he had a problem with it giving the correct count of the letters R in the word strawberry.
Mm-hmm. A lot of the models struggle with that.
I thought that must have been something he made up. So I went online myself, and true to form, it said strawberry had 2 R's, not 3. Mm-hmm. So when we take to an extreme the application of technology and surrendering to it some of the decision-making, some of the control I mentioned earlier, we do so at our peril. And going back to Dr. Fletcher's point about what we can do with it and the technology, the underpinnings we need, if you look at just the basics of telecommunications and how we cannot do a live stream from V4 to Cass Street without buffering from point to point. There are certain basic things we need to have in place before we could really take off with the use of that type of technology. And I look forward to the day when the things that we see or we could imagine we can use such technology for, we have the basics in place to make use of it. That's where I'll end. But I will say that, going back to the example about how many letters, how many R's are there in the word strawberry, it was amusing initially, but when you think about what else might be riding on top of that and what else is on top of it, it gave me a moment to pause and reflect that there's a lot we can do if it works well, but we really have to make sure that we get the basics right.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, very, very good. You'll be happy to know that of late there have been some models that have correctively been able to get the number of hours in the word strawberry. So I think we're still at the infancy stage, and we are now using different models and different ways of doing our assessments to be able to get some of these answers. So we're getting there. Yeah. Jerry.
Yes, hi. I'll start with a question and I'll circle back to it.
Mm-hmm.
When are we going to take charge of all of this technology for our own purposes?
Okay, I want you to explain
I'll come back to it. I was part of the whole discussion with the 2 hours versus 3 hours in strawberry and so on. And interestingly, even as an IT person, I only just recently jumped into the AI pool. I'd been avoiding it all along. And one of the things that worries me is that from the start, I kept thinking of that movie, Minority Report.
Mm-hmm.
And it brought me to where Dr. Fletcher said, for example, who is training the AI?
Mm-hmm.
Even the ones we don't know about. Now, you mentioned about you can ask AI to speak Lucian Creole, and it will do so. Actually, it doesn't. 3 days ago, one of my colleagues did the test, and it was speaking Creole, but it was speaking Creole with a Martinican accent.
Haiti and Martinique.
And the reason for that is, where did that training come from? It's not been trained on Lucian Creole, so it will not give you Lucian Creole. Now, that's where the cultural bias comes in. Going back to the idea of the Minority Report. For something as innocuous as how many hours in strawberry, and it says 2 instead of 3. What happens to larger decisions that we, as individuals, don't see the back end, the underbelly, how the sausage is made. We don't see that. We feed something into the machine, and those machines can get as large and as complex as possible. It can be things like deciding whether you get a visa, whether you get admitted into a country, whether a judicial decision takes you to jail or sets you free. And when you have those kinds of flaws that are in there that we are not aware of, and someone says, but your solution is incorrect. And I say, no, well, that's what the machine says, so it has to be correct. I mean, nowadays, we even get that with simple cash registers where you say, no, you made a mistake. And I say, that's what the machine told me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we have to be aware that those sorts of biases, those kinds of issues can affect what we do. And so we have to get involved. We have to get involved very early on. We can't wait until the developed countries or those with their own self-interest develop their systems and pass it on to us. Who will determine what the guardrails are? Okay? We have to be part of that conversation, and we cannot sit back and wait until it's developed to then just accept something where we will then become, as you said, we'll simply remain consumers or slaves to whatever is pushed onto us. And if those systems are being manipulated from the back end, who knows what's happening? The videos that we get on our mobiles, whether it's TikTok or whatever, those are generated from algorithms that someone is manipulating for their own purpose, okay? Whether it is to collect data or whether it is to train you to think in a particular way, okay? There was a report, I think it was over the weekend, where on certain large-scale social media platforms, I won't mention them, X, the algorithm was actually pushing misinformation to persons about storm relief and so on, simply because someone had decided that that is what they want, or that is what they want to happen. So, coming back to how do we take charge of it? We have to be proactive. We have to start deciding what kind of guardrails we, within the region, want. And as a Caribbean collective, we're more similar than anything. We have particular nuances, cultural, whatever, that are particular to us that is not understood from the outside. Where, who was it that said the voice was saying aggressive? Right.
Yeah,
and that's how we speak. Our social space and how we socialize is very different to someone in North America, someone in Europe, and so on. So we need to step forward and take charge, get into the discussions, get into the determination of how we will implement policy and how we will drive and guide that policy so that it benefits us, as opposed to letting someone send it to us and they control what we do. Thank you.
Very, very good. Very good points, Jerry. And I think you mentioned something very important, that I think if we are to make any progress, this is not something that we can do at an individual country level, or even at an institutional level. But if you understand how Europe approached this whole thing, even releases of ChatGPT or Microsoft Office or Windows, that they had to write separate versions to be able to use there because their legislation was in place to say, no way, we need to know what kind of data your models are being trained on. We need to see every single thing, the source of those, of that data set. Okay, we need to understand how these things work. So they had to now rewrite applications specifically for Europe. They put things in place years before they started working on the infrastructure, as Dr. Fletcher mentioned, right? Things having to do with hardware and software and infrastructure and all that, and policy, legislation. So everything was in place to be able to, the train to move as one. Are we doing this as a region? Okay. How many of you all know that UNESCO developed an AI framework years ago? How many? Not many people even know about that, right? That was years ago. A number of countries came together, right? And we had that blueprint. But what have we done with it? It's just sitting there, all right? So it's not for lack of knowledge or lack of ability, but do we have the will? Do our policymakers even understand the technology? Or even understand the need to change? And maybe even if they understand it, do they want to change? Do the powers that be want to change? Because it means so much. I mean, the cost implications of making the change, all right? And speaking about change, cost, I mean, Dr. Fletcher mentioned it, but we don't understand there's a cost to even doing some of those things. Recently in the United States, they realized that a lot of those data centers use a lot of energy, and they started looking now at nuclear power to be able to power some of those, big AI data centers, right? So if we are to take advantage of the technology, our little laptops cannot handle some of those things. So we have to be hosting on Amazon or one of these, cloud hosting platforms. But it's costly because you're looking at paying per minute. Yeah? How many of us could afford that? How many of us can afford to buy those systems? Of course, the prices are coming down, but how many of us can really afford it? But how many of us can afford not to because of where it is going? So how do we weigh the cost? What do we have in our budgets going forward in terms of AI implementation, AI adoption? Okay. Training is critical. How much money do we have in there for training at an individual level, at a corporate level, at a department, at a national level? Have we seen the need to change? And somebody mentioned earlier about retooling, right? That is extremely, extremely important. Yeah. How much money and time have you spent on educating yourself? I mean, Doc mentioned something very important in his discourse, that the youth will be the ones who will embrace the technology. It sounds nice, huh? But if you understand the nature of the technology, it's almost like we are consumers. And even in the use of the tool, I don't see a lot of people using it to educate themselves. So let me see how I can use ChatGPT to explain a concept to me that I did not understand. Let me see if I can tell it how I should write better. Let me see if I could tell it to explain to me that concept or that concept, all right? How can I use it to become a better person or to become more skilled in what I'm doing rather than letting the tool do it? And this is my fear, that the next generation will be so consumed by what the tool could do that they lose the skills. And we have been creatives. I mean, today we spoke, Drania and myself were talking about that, right? That we are losing some of the skills, and we are a threat at losing some of the skills, the things that made us Caribbean, that made us great, writing a calypso and putting a pan together, beating out a pan and writing a score and writing a skit and coming up with, the ideas, the concepts of bringing people together and all that. These are social constructs and things that that define us as a people, right? Even in conversing, today we had a discussion that we spent probably about an hour and a half, and I had to say, guys, I have to go to do something. But that debate was so interesting as we spoke about AI and all that. And I'm saying, but the tools are now moving us away from this, because now there's now a disease where persons are falling in love with chatbots. And I can tell you, as somebody who uses it, that it's so easy to speak and say, look, tell me how to do that, or have a conversation. And people, and if you understand where the technology is going, and I saw it 2 years ago when I was at a certain hotel for holidays. I saw a whole family. Somebody had a tablet, somebody had a laptop, and there was like table tennis equipment and the pools and all that, and they came down and spent their money, and all of them were on their devices at a table and still using the devices. So I say all of this to say that these are the kinds of discussions that we need to have in terms of what are our priorities. Somebody mentioned that, okay? You wanted to say something, so you went back. Yes.
Yeah, so, where do I start? Okay, so in terms of at least AI, right, I think one thing, starting here, is that now the term is being thrown around left and right, but a lot of that nowadays is more, that is the most revolutionary part of it, is generative AI. Mm-hmm. A lot of other forms of AI, right, have been around for a lot longer than people recognize, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's one thing a lot of people at first need to take into account. This isn't necessarily new, but it's expanded on a level that is now something to keep in mind, even more so than if you had never thought of it before, right? And going on top of that, I myself, 22 turning 23, right? I can say among my peers, right, I am fortunate enough to be interested. I like to look at the consumer, a little bit of the commercial, and of course the greater scale of technology, but even among my peers, that isn't necessarily a norm, right? Mm-hmm. I've been very fortunate enough to learn the skills of, how to Google. A lot of people don't think about that, but while someone might write the most recent studies on self-driving cars, I might write self-driving cars studies 2024, and that might give me an exact set on what I'm looking for, right? Learning how to use Google in that way, right? Now, with the emergence of a lot more artificial intelligence and various models, right? Rather than searching that, you can just search most recent studies on self-driving cars 2024, because the language used for that has developed to make it more common, to make an easier barrier to entry, right? But on top of that, going back to, how we're saying education is important, right? Education and effective communication is the best way to learn how to use those tools, right? Going into it, right, that means even among my peers, as someone who is into that sort of field that has that interest, right, where you can learn to use those tools isn't very known, right? It isn't very out there, and it very much is up to those who are interested in it, who's willing to step into the deep end and learn how to use it, are the ones that will truly flourish, also known as the early adopters, right? So going on, keeping that in mind, and us talking about education, how do you think, with your expertise, right, with your knowledge, is the best way to implement that knowledge, that use of the tools, the use of generative AI, to truly benefit and understand its pros and cons, and how one can use it truly for themselves on how to be creative, rather than losing that creativity, right?
Okay, so your question is a very good one, and that's why it goes back to the discussion I had with the Principals Association 4 years ago when I spoke to them. I think traditionally, if you understand our current educational system, It's about pouring stuff in here, regurgitating it to pass an exam, so that you can get gainful employment, and then, right? Those who have learned to excel in the accumulation of knowledge and, well, I wouldn't even say the application of the knowledge, but the accumulation of knowledge, you get compensated or you get paid for the demonstration of the knowledge that you have. Generative AI, or AI as we know it now, has removed that divide because information, knowledge, the ability to decipher, to be able to apply, to be able to understand, to be able to do everything is now at your fingertips. So somebody who has 4 masters and 2 PhDs may not necessarily, I have to be careful what I'm saying, may not necessarily have an advantage because you're able to spit out that, as Dr. Fletcher said. In 2 minutes, he is able to spit this out, right? Somebody who didn't go to school is able to do the same thing if he understands prompt engineering and understands how to do it, can do it, right? So this calls for a re-evaluation of our educational system based on those new tools that we have. And I do not even think that we understand how or where we should start. I mean, we have a principle here. I think it gives us the opportunity to go back or to go to a place where I think we needed to go before. Where it is sort of like one-on-one, where you understand needs, the needs of the individual, and it's not about a system of passing or failing, but it's understanding how I can equip or retool someone to make them more efficient in what they're doing, right? So I don't know if that answers your question. Somebody. Yes, we have, yes. Okay, but thanks so much for your question. Yes. Glenn, you're trying to get me. Okay, yes. Sorry about that. I saw you, but then you got lost in somebody else's. Yeah.
That's fine. Just a few comments. I think, first and foremost, the talk about we need to get to the table is a waste of time talk. We're not going to get to anybody else's table. We're too small to get to anybody else's table. What we need to do is to build our own table. And I think that's the problem that we've had for years in this region, is that we always try to get to a table of people who have a lot more resources than ourselves. So for example, the example of the Europeans telling Microsoft what you have in this, we can't say that to Microsoft. Not at this point, because we're just not economically powerful enough to ask such a question. The budget of Microsoft is greater than our collective budgets. So you're not going to be able to tell Microsoft, show me what you have. What we need to do is to make our own table, and you see that in a lot of the Asian countries, what they've done is build their own table. And now their table is able to compete with other tables. And people want to destroy your table because you have a table. We don't have a table, but we want to go to somebody else's table, and that's the problem. I've been in education for a while, and the question keeps on coming up, what is the education system going to do? The education system needs to stay focused on fundamentals, because everybody keeps on saying it and they're not recognizing that the answer has been said over and over. People are not recognizing when the AI is going wrong, because if you can't read and you can't understand, you'll just accept it. So the fundamentals of education, literacy, numeracy, understanding how to interpret and analyze, are the skills that you actually need to utilize the AI and not just play with the AI. And most persons believe that the young people will take advantage of the AI. The AI will take advantage of young people because they are not versed in the fundamentals. And hence the reason why you see most of the persons maximizing AIs are persons who have a solid foundation in reasoning, understanding, and being able to read and write. Most of our mathematic problems is an English problem. So everybody say people are doing bad in math because they can't read. You give them a problem and they can't understand what the 4 words on the paper are saying. But guess what? they can call all the sounds.
Mm-hmm.
They can make it seem as if they know what the word is. So they can see Caribbean, they can repeat the sounds of Caribbean, but they don't understand what Caribbean is. So the problem with the educational system is not to try to become like the AI, but to stay rooted in the fundamentals so that persons can utilize the AI and whatever other technology comes around. Because today it's AI. Yesterday it was a truck. 20 years ago it was a donkey. But the fundamentals remain the same. You need to understand this is the technology, this is what you need to want, this is the outcome that you want. How do I utilize the tools to get the best outcome? Full stop, that's what education is about.
Very, 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 very good point. We'll have just one more. And I love your point. The deep question is, where do we start teaching those things? Where do we start?
I couldn't agree more. I wholeheartedly agree with what was said before about applying the knowledge and knowing how to have the fundamentals in place to judge what tool is needed to do a task. So bringing it back to productivity and competitiveness, and just going back again to the self-driving cars or vehicles. Do we have a plan in place for the rollout of the week or beyond about how to provide people like ourselves with tips and tricks on what tools and applications to use to get certain tasks done? So for example, I frequently put together presentations as part of my work, and it's good to have some graphics attached to each slide to make it have a little more oomph. That used to be a chore. Now I could just put in a prompt and I get a generated image and it's there. That's done. So that's a simple process that we could equip persons with skills to improve their capacity. Will there be some sort of training like that offered to persons generally? And switching gear again, the application of the technology and the knowledge as the case may be. If we think of how we could apply different types of technology, and I'm going back to self-driving vehicles, if we consider that there are persons today, if you drive to certain parts of the country at night, there are people looking for transport to get to Dennery, Viewfort, etc. And it's 10, 11 in the night. With self-driving vehicles, we could have a fleet of automated vehicles making rounds around the country, giving those people a way to get home on a regulated sort of fashion. So I'm thinking of how we could apply technology, whether it's self-driving cars, whether it's ChatGPT or anything else.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that we have, as part of the program being planned, how persons could be equipped and empowered to actually use some of the basic tools to improve their capacity.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, we do, as I see we're wrapping up, and this is one of the things like my company does. We've trained quite a number of persons in both the private and public sector, organizations. We regularly hold training sessions, workshops, and teaching them fundamentals in artificial intelligence, in the tools. Thursday, we'll be holding a session for secretaries in the service. We had a session for the IT professionals and managers and key department heads a few months ago. Yeah, looking at this whole AI thrust and understanding how AI works. So I'm saying education is something that is going forward. There is an element of self-education that's extremely important. Yeah, we have access to tools. We have access to YouTube. We have access to ChatGPT. We have access. So we cannot have the old way of thinking and say my employer didn't, or my mother didn't, or they didn't have money to send me to school. All of us, if we truly understand the need for us to develop ourselves, can take advantage of what is there. And I think forums like these are part of the educational process. But I think tonight is one of those nights where at least we can have a discussion about the importance of reshaping productivity in whatever form that is. I think in the service it is extremely important and necessary. I think in the private sector, on an individual level, it's extremely important. And this whole thing to enhance competitiveness is extremely important. But all of us have to understand that we need to be responsible. We need to take advantage of what is there, and also understanding the risks that are involved, and making sure that whatever we do is implemented in a safe and responsible manner. So I thank all of you tonight for your input. I thank you all for coming there. My timekeeper is there. So thank you so much for the discussion, and I really enjoyed you all being here. Thank you.
So thank you, Jim. A bigger round of applause for Jim. Jim has been at it all day with us. And I know that he had some more to do in terms of actually showing you his, what is her name again? Roberta on screen. But just as Dr. Fletcher said, sometimes if the technology does not work right, we have an issue. And so we have to correct that first. So, Jim, you actually showed a video with this robot. And I'll tell you what, Dr. Fletcher and Kurt could say what they want about, we have to do our own. I want that robot to cut my grass, wash my yard, wash my yard. As soon as it comes, I will want to buy one. Because, you can't rely on some people sometimes. You tell them come and they don't coming. So, and well, it might lock me out of my house. That's the only problem. And it might be stronger than me. I need another robot to protect me. Oh my God. So you see that the doubters, they'll take my wife, everything. Oh goodness. That's why we're so pessimistic in this country. Let me thank you so much. You've been a wonderful audience. I really see that the discussion is rich. There's a lot more to discuss. There's a lot more that we can see tonight, but we have a whole week. And we invite you to some of the other activities, particularly the Friday activity. And we have Stanza Deligny. Stanza, please stand. A young, powerful young lady here. And she is planning, along with Brent and Catherine, the AI Summit St. Lucia. I have to say it right or else she corrects me. And this is something we're going to invite you to, AI talks in the morning up till the afternoon portion. And then we have the AI Expo, showing really the power, the transformative power of AI. And so the productivity team and NCPC really wanted to delve into this issue, and they wanted St. Lucians to participate, to hear, and to really come up with some ideas as well. And Kurt has been passionate about, first you have to understand the fundamentals. And Kurt, how many times have you said that? Nobody's listening to you. You have to probably become the chief education officer, something, Kurt. So let me thank you, and before you leave, we do have some refreshment outside for you. Thank you very much. You've been a wonderful audience. Thanks again.